Removing rust, like on this fender right here when you're restoring a car, can sometimes be a pain in the butt. And let me explain what I'm talking about. Take a close look at this fender. You can see this fender has been stripped to bare metal. We're going to walk over here and look at this one, get a better look at what's going on here, and you can see that this car is actually being restored. And the car that those fenders go to is right here. It's a 1965 GTO convertible. This is a very rare car, and not being rare, it's a very unique car because I want everybody to take a look at the floors in this thing. They look immaculate, almost brand new. You can see the trunk floor still all intact, and it's got minimal rust repair to do on this vehicle. But that still doesn't leave the inconspicuous, hard to get and hard to reach spots such as this right here. Now what we're looking at right here, this is the inside of the fender, which bolts down inside the engine compartment to the inner fender well, which would go right here. Move back there so you can see that, those two holes there. And then of course these holes right here would bolt to the firewall of the vehicle, and then this is what you see when you open the hood up, and then you would partially see part of this thing right here. But what we're concentrating on is spots and angles and hard to reach places just like that right there. And if you look real close, it's got some pretty, I wouldn't say super heavy duty, but it's got some mild surface rust that we got to get rid of. Now, before we go any further, we had this car and all the pieces have been soda blasted. These were soda blasted, and then they were metal treated with vinegar and muriatic acid, and they are cleaned off 100% authentically, accurately. And if you look down inside here, you're going to say, well, that's rusty too. That's not rust you're looking at right there. The goldish color of what you're looking at, and when I say goldish, I'm talking about this part in here. What that is the residue from the vinegar when you wash your parts off with vinegar water, and then once you detail that out and clean it up with a Scotch-Brite, all that will come clean. But then over here you can see this is surface rust, which we'll be treating and getting rid of. But the main thing we're talking about today is hard to reach spots. How can I get that rust out of there, my friend Pete, so it won't continue to rust out, and get that cleaned out so we can have a nice, clean restoration? What can we do to get rid of all that, my friend Pete? Well, there's actually several things you can do to get rid of that. Let me reach over here and grab one of my tools. One tool that I use in particular is a wire wheel and a drill. It's a meticulous job. It takes a long time, and when you come over here to this angle here and you're starting to do all this right here, it can really get to be a pain in the butt. But it actually works with enough, what can we say, elbow grease? You know, that's a word that we don't use anymore in today's world because nobody really wants to work hard for a living and make a living. They all want to sit on their asses and be lazy. That might not be you, or should it be you? Or is it you? We don't know yet. Only you got the answer for that. And then, of course, the tool of choice for most people is nitty-gritty, meticulously, painstakingly, time-consumingly taking little pieces of sandpaper and coming over here like this, and we would take the 36 grit first and clean that out like that, and then we'd come over here and do a little bit of that action, and you know, eventually it'll come out, and eventually you'll get it detailed enough to where you can go ahead and prime it and paint it. But let's go ahead and look at a tool that we can all afford, and if you have half a brain, you can probably figure out how to use it, but you do need an air compressor for this tool. And the tool we're talking about is this tool right here, which is made by Central Pneumatic. It's called a blast gun with gravity feed. Now this is for spot sandblasting. This is a spot blaster. I don't remember how much this costs, but I am going to tell you this. I got it over at Harbor Freight. actually use this gun quite often, and it actually works very well. This is one of them tools, rare tools that you buy over at Harbor Freight that's actually worth the money. And I'm going to show you how this is used. But before we go any further with that, let me show you the material that we're going to use with our blast gun, gravity feed, made by Central Pneumatic, Harbor Freight, I might say, and go from there. And then we'll go over the tool and I'll show you how to use it. Hopefully, it's going to work out good. Or I'm going to shoot myself in the head. So here's another item that I purchased over at Harbor Freight. It's 44 pounds of 70 grit aluminum oxide blast media. Now, I'm using this because this is a very, very fine blast media. It only costs like $15 or $20 for 44 pounds. You can see that it's been sitting around in my shop. I don't use it a lot. I don't like to do sandblasting. But for what we're going to do, using our blast gun right here, this works really awesome. And one more thing I want you to look at. What does that say right there? Exactly, exactly. So maybe you're not sitting around being as lazy as I thought if you actually read and understood what that stuff is good for. Maybe. So the blast gun is a pretty simple item to use. It's actually self-explanatory, and what I'm talking about when I say self-explanatory, this right here would be our container where we would pour our blast media into, and you just pop the lid open like that. You go ahead and pour your material into the container, and then the lid snaps shut. What we got here, this is a volume control. How much media do we want to blast out to match the air pressure that we are using? So if we open it up all the way, it's going to really, really blast hard, but then if we close it, the more we close it, the less material is going to be traveled through the gun itself. Here's our air outlet here, which hooks up to a air compressor, and I would suggest that you have at least 100 psi to operate this. Some people say that it'll work off 50 psi, this, that, and the other, but if you read your directions closely, right here, you'll see that it says 90 psi, 7 CFM. So that's why I am requiring that you use at least 100 psi and make sure that it blows out properly. Now, we're also calling this container a hopper, all right? That's what they're calling it anyway. So the hopper holds a 20-ounce volume of material, which is more than enough to do the job that we're going to do. So I'm going to set my gun right here. I'm going to take my blasting media, which is the aluminum oxide, and we're going to go ahead and pour that in there easily. And then once we've done that, we'll go ahead and shut our lid. And we're ready to go ahead and hook it up to our air compressor. Now, one more thing I want to cover before I hook this up to air. You want to make sure that you have a water trap protection system on your air system, because if moisture gets trapped in this and blows out of it, it's going to make your media damp and wet, and it'll clog it up. So make sure that you have some type of an air trap system on it, or possibly one of the little filters that you see, the little round filters that screw onto your gun. Put that on there just to trap the water and the moisture from getting into your blaster gun. We're going to go ahead and hook that up just like that. And then I'm going to come over here, because this is actually made for a right-hand person, not left-hand. And then once again, this is our volume, and I want to show you what's going on here as you squirt it out. And I don't even know if you can see it because it's such a fine blast, but it is squirting out. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start sandblasting our problems away. Before we start blasting, I do want to say one more thing. This will make a mess. This is sandblasting, and it does make a mess. So always make sure that you wear the proper safety equipment, such as eyeglasses for one. Can you see my big head there? And then also a respirator mount.
Just like that. There you go.
as you can see, this little tool really does the job. I believe this thing was like $15. I don't remember what it was, maybe less than that. Harbor Freight, once again, I gotta say, Harbor Freight actually sells some really good stuff. Let's take a look at that and see how it came out. And if you look right there, you know what I'm talking about now. Look at that. Looks like brand new. And that, my friend, is how you remove rust. Just like that. By using that tool right there. Here's what it looked like before. You can see what we're talking about as we go down this fender. And then here's our after effect. It's a very handy tool. It's a tool that everybody should own. And it's a tool that says my friend Pete suggests and authorizes you to get off your ass, figure out what you're gonna do, and get her done.
I gotta get this other fender done. I got a lot going on over here at D.I.Y. Auto School SWRC. Y'all take it easy. I hope you enjoy all the videos. Please leave your comment below. And if you haven't hit the bell next to the subscribe button, please do so. It'll notify you when my friend Pete uploads new videos. Let me get to work.
Watching D.I.Y. Automotive School. Classes don't stop till you know everything.